Hello everybody. Today's project is working on this American pattern scythe. I just want to get it operational. The first thing to do when you get your scythe is to adjust the nibs. Some of these are left-hand thread. These happen to be right-hand thread. So just try a little bit in either direction. Make sure you're not over-tightening it if it's left-hand thread. And then these little handles sometimes need to be pried open. This was set into a little carved notch within the scythe. I am going to completely disassemble this thing just so I can get a look at it. My goal here is not a restoration. I'm not trying to restore this thing like new. I'm just trying to get it working again so that I can use it. This bolt holds an adjustment plate, and this adjustment plate allows you to change the angle of the scythe in relation to how open or closed it is. So these little teeth work with that little washer in there, and the tang of the blade goes into one of those holes, and that allows you to push the toe of the blade, either open or closed. Here I'm just going to tap the end off. We've got to get this thing out of here. Now this is a railroad scythe, or weed scythe. It's much heavier than a grass scythe would have, and the end of this is about 2 inches. So it's it's a big beefy piece of wood here. These were very handy for clearing right-of-ways along the railroad. They're really used for heavy weeding down in ditches, in amongst, stony ground and other rough country. So this is not going to be for mowing grass. This is going to be for clearing weeds. Again, I'm not looking to restore, but I do want to make sure everything works. So I'm just threading the handle back in upside down in order to pull these nuts out. Not a bad idea, keep you from losing them. I have to go grind. The ends of these were cut up by the little spacers. And so I want to deburr that and bevel it so it doesn't split in use. I'm just taking the nuts out so that I don't lose them during this step, which of course I'm just grinding the chamfer into the end of the nib. Pretty quick little job here. I am trying to be clean, square everything up, and remove that sharp edge of wood. It sits down into a little recess on that collar, and it had become cut through the years. And those little sharp cuts will start a split if you don't watch them. Now, being so tall, I have to move everything up this scythe to beyond its limit. So I'm going well beyond what it was designed to do. And the scythe itself is tapered. So what I have to do here is close the ring up so that it will fit up on the tapered section. You can see the original band where the scythe used to be. And I'm moving mine up, probably around 8 inches or so. Rule of thumb is that the top nib should sit high under your armpit. I don't think I'm going to be able to achieve that here. There's just not enough scythe to get that top nib up as high as I would like it. Here, the bottom nib, I've closed it completely parallel, and I squeezed the band completely together in there, and it's still too big. So I'm just closing it up a little bit more on the anvil here. And we'll slide it on, see what that does. So here again, you can see that the sort of chew marks where the original sat, and then I'm about 8 inches up from that. That's way too high, but again, you know, I picked this up for $25. The idea was to just have a little ditch scythe to run, and I had this video in mind, you know, as a way to show everybody how to tune up a scythe that you might find at a garage sale or a junk shop. And if you're tall like me, I'm 6'4", and if you're tall or taller than I am, one of the real drawbacks to the American scythe is that the snaths you find are generally sized for much shorter people. Right around 5'10", I think, is where you're going to max out an American snath. But if you happen to be a little taller, there are some tricks we can use to make it work. So here I'm just tapping those nuts back into the handle. I think I crossed them up. This one doesn't want to go in as easily as the other one. So I think I just crossed them up. But they'll pull in just fine. And I'm just sort of snugging them on there. I don't want to get them really tight. Even though it looks here, I'm tabbing and turning, you might think, boy, he's really, really tightening that thing up. But all I'm doing is just seating that nut into the... So here I'm going to try out the snath alone, just to see what kind of a position it's offering. Move the nibs around a little bit. Feels a little too wide to me here. My right shoulder is a little bit dipped. And it feels a little uncomfortable, so I'm just loosening it up, and I'm going to move it to right around a cubit. So within a cubit of the upper nib, a cubit is the distance between your elbow and the tips of your fingers. So your cubit is particular to you. Handy little measurement, and having moved it up a little closer, I think it's about a cubit and maybe an extra inch. That feels pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and reassemble the head now. This little washer here has 2 ears on it that engage with a couple of ears on the other, well, snath saver or tang plate, whatever you want to call this, this little iron plate here. What I'm going to do is throw it all the way open, just as far as it can go. So everything, again, it's a height thing. So if you happen to be tall, you know, you'll have to do this with a scythe that you find, most likely, because it won't be set for you. If you find one that's set for you, I think you'd be extremely lucky. So I have this set all the way open, just as open as ever it could be. And that relates to the arc that this scythe will cut in. The more open it is, the larger arc it will cut in. In order to open a scythe, you want to move the tang forward. Because it's L-shaped, moving the tang forward will raise the tip. Moving the tang backward will lower the tip. This had a strange little spacer that went in under the ring bolt. And I did go ahead and install that because the ring bolt, either the carving for it or the ring bolt itself, would need to be adjusted in order to work without that spacer. Okay, I've got the nibs adjusted so that they are 1 cubit apart. I've got them angled so that they actually give me an additional bit of height. So instead of having this nib tipped over where my hand would be in front of the snath, I've got it almost vertical, which allows me to get on top of the snath and save just another inch yet. But we can see here, if I'm in a proper mowing position, the blade is facing up. That's not always a bad thing, and we'll get into that later. There are some times where I prefer the blade to be tipped up substantially. Generally, if I'm mowing in really rocky, stony kind of, on trails and right-of-ways and things where you're in, there's all kinds of debris, trash, metal pipes, things like that. I actually prefer to have the blade up, because then I ride it. I just coast it on the back of the spine, and the toe of the blade being angled up will skip over any rocks or anything, instead of dragging the actual sharp portion of the blade across them. But I can accomplish that by taking a half step or a full step into the swath, thereby raising the angle or lowering it. So what I'm going to do now is actually change that angle slightly, just to lay it down a bit more for me. I'm going to go out to the forge and do that. I just get an idea of how much I think I need to move it, and then I do about half that. All right, so now we're back in the forge, and I'm using oxyacetylene here to heat the tang of this scythe. The rag that you see there is soaked in water. That is protecting the jaws of the vise as well as the temper on the blade. Just let this cool naturally. You don't want to quench it. You run the risk of hardening it, and then it might snap later in use. So here I'm just hitting this blade with a little bit of light oil, and then working it over with an old tricorner stone that I found on the family's farm years ago. I probably picked this up when I was 12 or 13 years old. This blade was in really good shape. It did not need much. If you notice down by the edge, I am just stoning it until I get one nice shiny line all along the edge. You don't want any corrosion or rust down there on the edge, because that will prevent it from being sharp. But with just a little bit of light stoning, I took it out to the field and started mowing around the log pile, and it worked great. This is all goldenrod and chicory, purple loosestrife, things that mow pretty easily in the early morning. You want to catch it with dew on it. Everything's sort of soft and a little easier to cut if it's wet. So, light rain, some dew, something like that really helps. As you can see, it worked pretty well. I'm going to be making a video on scythe technique here in a bit. But for now, just a bit on getting them set up. Thanks for watching.